Hi, my name is Supersonic Corey, and today I'm going to talk about a new series that I'm starting up. I'm calling it my What's the Perfect Movie sequel, where I analyze a film, talk about how a movie ended, the pros and cons to making a sequel, and most importantly, if that movie was to have a sequel, what would it be about? I already have several of these types of videos planned for my new series, so if you want to see more of these, please comment, click like, share, and most importantly, subscribe so you know when I upload it, and I'll be sure to make more of these. The movie I decided to start my new series on is on the latest Pixar movie, Inside Out. It's no secret that Inside Out was a huge success. Like I said in my worst to best Pixar movies video, Inside Out made more money than the Lego Movie, one of the biggest and best films of 2014. Heck, the tagline for the DVD and Blu-ray is even going to read, one of the best films of the year. So I've decided to analyze the film and answer this question. What is the perfect Inside Out sequel? Since we're going to be talking about a possible sequel, this means talking about the first film, and mainly how the first film ended. So if you haven't seen Inside Out yet, don't watch this video. Spoilers are everywhere. You have been warned. There's the door. Bye! Ha! So now for those who have seen Inside Out, let's begin. Okay, so story-wise, other than the overall premise, the story of a child's everyday life being told through her emotions perspective, the plot from the first film is that Riley, an 11-year-old girl, has just moved to San Francisco, and her emotions struggle to adapt to the new environment. Eventually, joy and sadness accidentally get lost in Riley's head along with her core memories, so joy and sadness have to find their way back to headquarters. Get it? And restore her core memories. They also need to do this in a hurry because Riley's islands are being torn apart, and the emotion anger just gave Riley the idea to run away from home, but quickly realized that was a terrible mistake. Neither anger, disgust, or fear could remove the light bulb, but sadness could, so they needed joy and sadness to return to headquarters as soon as possible. Eventually, Joy learns that you can't have joy without sadness. Joy manages to return to headquarters with sadness as she gets sadness to successfully remove the light bulb, preventing Riley from running away. After saving Riley from ruining her life, Joy requests to upgrade the control panel. Now the control panel is bigger and has much more buttons. Now this is where I start to talk about the pros and cons to making a sequel to Inside Out. Let's start with the cons. Pixar is doing so well at the moment. They were doing a bit poorly when releasing unnecessary sequels, which weren't as good as what Pixar used to be. But this year they finally are doing much better with brand new original ideas. We have The Good Dinosaur and Inside Out coming out the same year, both very good original Pixar films. Since Pixar are well aware that this is working and bringing them back to the top of CG animated movies, they decided that it'd be a smart idea to keep making unnecessary sequels. I mean, do we really need a Cars 3 or a Toy Story 4? Okay, The Incredibles 2 is something to look forward to, but other than that, really Pixar? Anyway, so since Pixar are working on mindless cash grabs instead of making original films, despite the fact the original films are the ones that are making all the money, looking at Pixar from this circumstance, Inside Out 2 would be a terrible idea, because an Inside Out 2 at this point would be considered another cash grab. However, there is a pro to giving Inside Out a sequel, and that is, aside from The Incredibles, Inside Out is a Pixar movie that is perfect to give a sequel to. Toy Story 3, Cars 2, Finding Nemo are movies that can do perfectly fine on their own, but Inside Out is a movie where the story could really easily be expanded upon. And since I love the first film so much, if Pixar ever releases an Inside Out 2, you can bet that I'll be the first in line to see it. So if Inside Out 2 wasn't a cash grab and Pixar legitimately wanted to make a good sequel, then what would Inside Out 2 be about? Let's start with the story. Now the first movie ended with Joy upgrading the control panel. Some of the buttons included swearing, and another button that Disgust points out is a button that reads puberty. Remember this button, as for it's a very important plot device for what I have in mind for the story for Inside Out 2. Inside Out 2 should take place around a couple of years after the first movie ended. By this point, Riley is around the age of 14. Riley's emotions, joy, sadness, anger, disgust, and fear, are doing great. All of the islands are in action. Joy is being much more fair and trusting with her other emotions, including sadness. And most importantly, Joy manages to keep Riley in a nice, happy mood in a nice and consistent rate. However, in a certain situation, no specific example, it causes all of the emotions to struggle with the situation. And in a frantic desperation to deal with the problem, one of the emotions, most likely disgust, accidentally presses the puberty button, kicking off the events of the movie's catalyst. As this happens, the emotions start to notice strange things. They've noticed that Riley has changed in terms of physical appearance, and in that I mean pimples, etc. Strange happenings are going on in some of the islands. For example, some of them aren't working properly, and worst of all, strange things seem to be going on in headquarters. Brand new memories keep falling off the shelf, and reoccurring earthquakes are constant. Joy decides that she's had enough and insists on leaving headquarters to investigate. This causes conflict between all 5 of the emotions because they are all needed to control Riley and to keep her consistent. And if Joy leaves headquarters, Riley will not be able to be happy until she returns. So the other emotions speak against Joy leaving. Joy insists that she should go because she needs to go down and see what's going on, because Riley could be in some sort of danger. She says that she's the one who needs to go because she'll be the one who can navigate the outside of headquarters the best since she's been outside before. She also admits that she's going to need Fear to join her on her journey because she needs Fear to take notes on the possibilities on what be considered threatening, since Fear is the expert on safety. Eventually, Fear reluctantly agrees. With that, Joy and Fear take off, using the same tube that they went through in the first movie. Joy and Fear are now discovering certain elements in Riley's system, like the long-term memory, and the islands are starting to fall apart. And all the little characters that Bing Bong, Sadness, and Joy all met throughout the first movie are all freaking out about what they believe could be the end of the world. And in that, I meant the end of Riley. Joy and Fear decide to head back and realize that there is a gigantic crack in the stand of the headquarters. This is a hint that Riley's entire subconscious mind is basically collapsing. Joy and Fear make it back to headquarters as quickly as they possibly can to tell the other emotions the news. They manage to get back by using the repaired train of thought from the last film. As soon as they get back, Joy tells Disgust, Anger, and Sadness what she saw. Fear and Disgust end up consulting with each other, and they figure out exactly what is going on. Disgust confesses with Joy that since she accidentally hit the puberty button, Riley has been completely changing both physically and psychologically. Neither Riley nor her emotions can handle the changes of puberty, causing Riley to literally break down. Fear confirms that the breaking down of headquarters equals Riley not being able to cope with her changes, and if the place collapses, Riley will eventually break down and end up in a coma. This horrible event they decide they need to try and avoid at all costs because it can be very dangerous, and they call this horrible event the brain tumor. The rest of the movie would pretty much be the emotions doing their best to prevent headquarters from collapsing, which at one point they fail. Eventually, however, HQ completely collapses and there's nothing left except for the long-term memory. It isn't until all seemed lost, until when the emotions and all the other members of Riley's subconscious decide to work together to try and build a new headquarters. Eventually, the construction is complete and very different to how it used to look. Now it looks a lot more like a teenager type of headquarters, and again, they get different types of islands. This HQ is also more specifically designed to be able to allow Riley to cope more with puberty, and eventually everything is all back to normal. The emotions have finally gotten back on track, and Riley is now at a very, very healthy emotional state. After all, Riley's 15 now. What can happen? Okay, now I will honestly say that it does sound very, very detailed, but that's exactly what I would do if I was in charge of the story for Inside Out. But what about the characters? Because I do have an idea for the characters as well. Now, while in the first movie, the main protagonist / main emotions of the movie was joy and sadness, because I had to learn a very important lesson. Joy had to learn that you cannot have joy without sadness, and vice versa. So Joy and Sadness were the main characters of the first movie. However, it'd be more interesting if the second movie, the main characters were Disgust and Fear. because I feel like they actually could learn a very important lesson themselves about change. We don't need a repeat of the first lesson from the first movie. We already know that joy cannot have joy without sadness, and so that lesson is done. I think in Inside Out 2 we could get a lesson talking about change and coping with it. And I think disgust and fear would be the perfect emotions to be able to try and deliver this lesson. I can see a really good character arc coming out of disgust with this movie. Seriously, if this is what you're gonna do for the story for Inside Out 2, do me a favor and make disgust the main character. No, disgust is not my favorite emotion of the 5. But with this type of story, I think disgust needs to be the main protagonist to deliver this type of message. Because I think disgust can have a very good character arc with this type of story. And fear can learn the same lesson, only in a different way. So the first movie's lesson could be about needing all 5 emotions, and joy is not the only important one. They are all equally important. And the second movie could be about dealing with change emotionally. In my opinion, this would be a great sequel for Inside Out, and if I was in charge of directing or screenwriting or anything like that, I would go for this type of story. Agree with my video? What do you picture for the perfect Inside Out sequel? Whatever your ideas are, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm Supersonic Corey, signing off. See you in my next video. Cheers.